Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Peter.
Episode 133, recorded on September 1st, 2021. GCP serverless functions, now with servers. Good evening, Jonathan and Peter. How's it going?
Great, Justin. How are you?
Going well.
Good. Ryan, decided to go join the 3-day weekend a little early, so he's not going to join us tonight due to work commitments. But that happens sometimes here, so we'll do without him. Just means that there's more points for you and I on the lightning round.
Yeah, something tells me his weekend did not start early.
Yeah. Well, we have some sort of follow-up and/or general news, depending on how long you listen to the show. So we last year we talked about Docker selling their enterprise business to Mirantis. And then we talked about Docker changing the terms of their free repos and what that meant to you and how that was going to cost you more money. And now I feel they've gone full Oracle with the announcement that they are now going to force enterprise customers to sign up for a paid plan to use its popular desktop application as of August 31st, 2021, which also happens to be the day they announced this. So there's no warning for you. And if you are a professional Docker desktop customer that works for a company with more than 250 employees or has over 10 million in revenue, you have until January 31st, 2022 to sign up for a paid subscription to keep using the app. It's crappy. It's a bad scenario. So now this thing I didn't budget for, I didn't know about, I now have to pay for as an extortion racket. Clearly their lawyers came from Oracle. That's all it says to me. It will apparently though remain free to use for some smaller businesses, personal use, education, and non-commercial open source projects, which the company says accounts for half of its current customer base. So this is just their reason to audit you at the end of the day and then make you pay a lot of money. Overall, this is not great. This is all led by CEO Scott Johnson, as he's trying to plot the turnaround of Docker after they sold that business to Mirantis, like I mentioned. The new pricing plans replace the free Pro, Team, and Large with the new Personal, Pro, Team, and Business plans, all available to you today to go sign up for and pay them a lot of money, unfortunately.
Well, I got to say, I agree with your assessment of pulling the carpet out is rough when people have already done their budgets for the year. However, if they don't bring in enough money to pay their staff and stay afloat, then the tool's going to go away either way. So got to do something to make some money.
Well, I mean, clearly they're not making enough money from the repos that they changed the licensing terms on. So now they're going after the next thing, which is this software. And I think it's fair to ask for donations. It's fair to say, hey, if this adds value to you, you have an option to pay for something. But this just feels dirty. I don't like it.
Or just give enough heads up.
What about having to shareware anyway?
Shareware was always crippleware. I used to buy that stuff in college and I would get so excited about the names and then I'd stick that floppy disk in my computer and it was awful. The only good thing about it was when Wolfenstein 3D gave like 3 free levels. That was the best thing I ever got in shareware.
You remember you used to get the CDs, the gamer CDs that have all the demos on all of the, like a full CD-ROM of demos every week. That was fun. But they're all shareware garbage for the most part. So occasionally you get like a cool skin for a game you played or something. But this is back when skins were, 8-bit objects in 3D, which were terrible. So you could sort of look like the thing, but it didn't really look like it. Now, you have Fortnite and it looks like, wow, that actually looks exactly like the thing for the movie. So it's just amazing the technology leaps we've done. But we still pay for all that stuff. Unfortunately, it's not free.
Not free.
Any alternatives to Docker Desktop?
I did do some looking around at this, and the best path that seemed I saw a couple blog posts mention was Minikube. Is kind of the way to go. Someone also mentioned Podman. There's a couple others as well that potentially have play, but the thing is Docker Compose, those type of things. Those are all very Docker specific today. Which you can do a Minikube, but you're just doing Kubernetes configuration. You're not doing Docker Compose, and that's a different syntax, a different YAML, if you will.
It's hard to see that they're going to be a successful business going forwards, really. I can imagine 3 to 6 months we'll be reporting that they're no longer in business or something. I can't see how gouging people in this way is sustainable when, there's still plenty of open source tools out there. Somebody will come along and say, hey, but we'll do this for free, while they still have some kind of momentum or inspiration to build a free tool before they change their minds later again, I guess. They're just going to lose through attrition their customer base.
Myself, long term, I think you're right. I think you deteriorate the business. I think in the short term, you probably just juiced your revenue dramatically because no customer is gonna be able to move off a Docker desktop this quickly. And if it's a licensing risk, they're not going to take that risk. Is most of the situation. Even Ryan and I were talking about it, the other day before podcast, and he was saying, he doesn't have the budget for it, but he really wants it. And I'm like, well, I don't know how you have a choice, because just because you don't want to use, you could use something else doesn't mean the rest of your developers can, or the rest of your teams can. And I don't know how you get out of this without, potentially having either a development impact, which is expensive for your organization, or you just pay the license fee. All right. Well, enough about Docker and their terrible choices. Hopefully someone buys them, like IBM or somebody. They just do the right thing. That's what I hope. Well, although IBM doing the right thing is a bit of an oxymoron, I guess.
We used to say that about Microsoft.
Yeah, that's true.
You never know.
Too. Because Amazon will buy them, of course. But Amazon has a bunch of new news things for us this week, as usual. First up is Amazon VPC routing enhancements. So back in 2019, we were super excited when they announced the bump in the wire technology to view traffic ingressing your EC2 instances to basically replay that traffic to an ENI. And that was great for north-south traffic, which goes basically from the internet to a web server to a database server, and you're crossing subnets. But if you're talking to multiple boxes inside of a subnet, or east-west traffic, as we call it, you could not do that. And so that was due to problems with routing. And in the routing table, there can't be more than one specific way to route the traffic via the default route. And so since the subnet's all in the same route, they're all in the same default gateway. And so how do you route traffic through that to get basically filtered and duplicated? And so that was a problem. Amazon, though, has now solved this restriction, which I would love to know the math on how they did that. And the routes in the routing table can have routes more specific than the default local route, and use these more specific routes to send all your traffic to a dedicated appliance or service to inspect, analyze, or filter all traffic flowing between two subnets by east-west traffic. You can also chain appliances to have more than one type of analysis. For example, you can first filter your traffic through a firewall, either an AWS one or a third party, then send that traffic to an IDS IPS device, and then finally perform deep packet inspection at a third device, all through this chain. Something to note, though, the network interface or service endpoint you are sending traffic to must be in a dedicated subnet. It cannot be in the source or destination subnet of your traffic. And each subnet will, of course, consume a block of IP addresses. And the appliance's security group must have a rule accepting incoming traffic on the desired port, obviously.
It's pretty interesting. I would love to have a really good deep dive on how the implementation of VPC networking has changed over the years. I mean, things like this must have been fundamentally sort of impossible because of the way they designed VPC. Those routes between subnets were always implicit routes, and so there must have been some huge changes to enable all these security features on the back end. But just think, what a vector for attack now is: deploy a man in the middle box in somebody's VPC to gather all their data.
That's definitely a different path. Add to the list of on my day at the door triggers. Yeah, the interesting thing is, we heard a few years ago that they had moved most of their network devices to their own silicon and their own Graviton-based ARM chips. So, I mean, having the full flexibility of owning the entire stack at the routing layer and at the physical layer allows them to have a lot more flexibility than most people can. I assume that's where this magic has kind of come into be for them for all the Nitro enhancements, as well as many of the other bump in the wire capabilities, is all from that introduction to ARM processing and their switches.
Yep. It's going to make the security guys very happy.
Yeah, make the IDS IPS providers probably pretty happy. The tools are going to be a lot easier to use.
It probably means, that's interesting. Yeah, usually you get these announcements 6 months before AWS actually release their own IDS IPS solutions. So they'll give their competition a good 6-month runway to test the new networking stack, and then they'll put them out of business with their own implementation.
Oh, that's that. Yeah, now the bad news. Amazon IDS.
Yep. Reinvent prediction, maybe.
Yeah, totally.
So, Peter, if I were to ask you what your biggest complaint or pain point of CloudFormation would be, do you have an answer for that?
Yes.
Okay.
I do. In fact, I don't just have an answer. I have, to this day, CloudFormation stacks in some of our original sandbox accounts that failed to spin up and then began rolling back, and then the rollback failed. And so it's just there forever. Rollback failed, can't move forward, can't move back. Versus, and that's one of the big things that got us to move to use Terraform. It was just so much easier, where you'd fail, stop, and then you can go tweak stuff and then retry and pick up where you left off. So
I do have to say that's a pretty impressive programming that you not only failed on the deploy, but also failed on the rollback. It's a testament to your programming attitude.
Yes. You know what? If it was real code and not just JSON, I would blame me, but I fully do not blame me.
That's true. It's definitely a JSON problem for sure. It's a comma missing somewhere. You just don't know where because it's JSON.
I mean, it's not code. It's a CloudFormation problem to look at my configuration, tell me, yeah, sure, I could totally spin that up, and then try and be like, oh yeah, this doesn't work at all. Let me just roll it back, and then be like, oh yeah, the thing I just created for you, I can't roll back. That was pathetic.
How about you, Jonathan? Do you have your biggest pain point in CloudFormation?
It's always been debugging, failing stacks on build, whether it's something wrong with a EC2 instance image or something in the user data or something like that. It's always been a chore to manage to catch an instance just in time, just as auto scaling's brought it up and deployed it, and it fails the health check, and you've got to take it out of the rotation and log in quickly and grab the logs before the whole thing gets torn down again. So yeah, it's not been the most friendly to troubleshoot.
Yeah, this is all a trick because I know that this is the number one complaint of all CloudFormation for all users because every person who's ever done CloudFormation who I've ever talked to has this complaint. And after years of waiting and suffering in the market, Amazon is fixing this problem for both of you and myself and Ryan as well. And knocking off those old PFRs is just a really nice thing at the end of the day. But basically, this allows you to disable the automatic rollback when CloudFormation fails, keep the resources successfully created or updated before the error occurred, and retry stack operations from the point of failure. This way, you can now quickly iterate to fix intermediate errors and greatly reduce the time required to test a CloudFormation template in a dev environment. My most common experience with this was dealing with CloudFormation. And so not only do you have the rollback, but it's a 30-minute roll forward and a 30-minute rollback. So, being able to just pause and say, okay, what happened? What went wrong? Or, in the other scenarios, you spun up something that's taking a long time, like an RDS database. And then somehow you defeat the CloudFormation timeout for the next step, and then it basically fails your entire stack. And it's like, well, I just needed to wait for the RDS, and now it's up, I could just retry, but that wasn't a capability before. So this is super nice and not required to roll back your entire CloudFormation. Super nice, or delete the entire stack. Thank you, Amazon. I appreciate this one.
That's really funny. I can simplify some of my old CloudFormation templates now, where I kind of had counters in there. So I'll say like deploy to step 1 or deploy to step 2, and sort of do the first deployment, and it uses conditional resources to just do a few things. And if it works, you do an update and you say, okay, now do the next bit. Now do the next bit. So that's awesome. If only I use CloudFormation anymore.
Exactly.
I mean, it is a little late when you consider like, oh, well, you've already pushed us to CDK. And then half the world's moved to Terraform or Pulumi because of your idiosyncrasies of these CloudFormation things. So, if you had done this 5 years ago, Terraform might not be as big as it is right now. And Pulumi might not even exist as a company.
Yeah.
But, here we are, and we all have better solutions that we all like. Although, Jonathan's still a CloudFormation purist at heart.
I do like CloudFormation.
Much as we try to teach you Terraform, you're always like, oh, CloudFormation.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you are using Textract to take data out of text documents, you now get a 32% price reduction in 8 AWS regions, and more importantly, and why we're talking about it, up to 50% reduction in asynchronous job processing times. Previously, there were different tiers for detect document text, or OCR, and analyze documents to pull the forms and tables out in every region. And so the complexity of managing your costs and predictability of that cost was very difficult. And so now they'll all be billed at the same rate, no matter the region. And this will save you anywhere from 9 to 32% reduction in your API pricing, unless, of course, you're already in the cheapest region. And then you got no benefit of this. So sorry for you. And then the asynchronous reduction in processing for end-to-end job processing time. You can invoke async on multi-paged documents. And based on customer feedback, they have made enhancements to reduce that end-to-end latency by 50%. With a lower processing time, the faster customers are able to process their documents, achieve scale, and improve their overall productivity, which is quite nice. So Textract, a couple good upgrades there.
Yeah, faster, cheaper. 2 of the 3.
I just think about all the companies who were, before Google got into the space and before AWS got into space, were trying to build their own ML models for document recognition, and how far they are versus how far Amazon and Google are in Azure. And it's like, well, this is the reason why using your cloud vendor might be the better choice.
Yeah,
because they're not even getting this kind of scale and/or price reduction for anything they're doing on top of ML.
You think they're related announcements, or do you think they've chosen to reduce costs because they've been able to reduce their own costs to run the service, and also that enabled them to maybe increase kind of the parallelization of the async jobs or something? I don't know.
It does seem like they must be related somehow, but I'm sure this is one of those under the hood things you'd have to understand that we just don't know. But the fact that they're announcing them together, they did seem somewhat on the surface to be unrelated. But yeah, if you don't now need to worry about OCR versus form or table extraction, and you can use the same processors or the same compute to do both functions without a lot of additional work, you can now do more async jobs, and so it kind of works out together, where they can now provide you faster processing as well as faster processing for themselves.
Yeah, I wonder how many more price cuts, or even if this price cut is related to Graviton-based savings, low power, cheaper silicon.
That would be my guess. If I were to guess on why there's a price cut, it's mostly most of the services that are getting price cuts these are moving to Graviton in a big way.
Hey everyone, Jonathan here. I just wanted to take a minute to thank the cloud consulting gurus at Foghorn for helping make the Cloud Pod possible. These folks truly get it. Cloud consulting experts since 2008, they are premier tier partners with AWS, Google Cloud Platform Silver, and Microsoft Azure partners. From multi-cloud to containers to moving full production workloads to the cloud under the tightest compliance, Foghorn's team of full-stack cloud engineers have been there, done that, gotten the t-shirt, and are ready to share their experience with you. If you're in the market for some talent to supplement your team, visit www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. Foghorn, the promise of cloud delivered.
Well, if you like CloudWatch and you like widgets on your CloudWatch dashboards, you can now build custom widgets, which is a new feature that allows you to gain operational visibility and agility by customizing the content of your CloudWatch dashboard using such as adding visualizations, displaying information from multiple data sources, or adding controls like buttons to take remediation steps. Custom widgets can help you correlate trends over time and spot issues more easily by displaying related data from different sources side by side on CloudWatch dashboards.
Button, just delete offending resource.
That'd be nice. Kill it. Then, of course, Amazon heard last week that Azure was letting you resize your prefix list, without having to undo peering. And so Amazon said, we can do that too. And they are now announcing for you the ability to resize your prefix list. VPCs now allow you to resize your prefix list, making it easier to manage your security and routing behavior as your network grows. Of course, prefix lists allow you to group multiple CIDR blocks into a single object and use it as a reference for your network configuration. You can then share the prefix list with other AWS accounts like a resource access manager, or use it to configure VPC route tables, security groups, and transit gateway route tables. Prior to this, the size of the prefix list or the amount of CIDRs it could contain was fixed at the time of creation, meaning that if you mess up then, you're doomed forever.
It's a useful feature that they added, but what a weird constraint that you couldn't modify it once it was already in production. It's always been useful for sharing public NAT addresses and things like this between services that have its multi-account strategy.
Yes, I think I think this is one of those things where you would create a new one and then delete the old one. But now that being able to modify one, you don't have to go through that create delete step and redo all your references and all your publishing and all the other gotchas with it. So, there's a lot of those patterns though in Amazon world where your way to change something is delete it first and then create a new one. Which is fine if you're not dealing with stateful data, but when you need data that needs to retain over time, it's a bit problematic. But then Amazon eventually gets you the ability to update versus just delete or create.
Yeah,
all the magic.
I think it would be interesting to see. I don't care what the IPs are that I'm sharing between this account and that account. I just want to share access between account A and account B. So let me kind of abstract that a little bit and say allow networking between these services, regardless of what the public IPs are. I don't care. I don't care if it's IPv4 or IPv6.
Well, I mean, that's what you could have in the all the fabric stuff we're talking about these days, and mesh networking. It's just like it's just an abstraction. I want to be able to basically call web app basically then equals these prefixes, and I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And just think about it as the name of the application, the name of the service, not the name of the prefix.
Getting closer
every day.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that are getting closer, Managed Grafana is now generally available. So if you've been using the new Managed Grafana services, it is now publicly generally available, so you don't have to request access to the private beta or any of those crazy things anymore. And in addition to releasing it generally available, they gave us a bunch of new features, including the new upgraded V8 version offers a new data sources, visualization, and features, including library panels that you can build once and reuse on multiple dashboards, a Prometheus metric browser, and a new state timeline and status history visualization. They now give you the ability to query data now with JSON data source plugins, which allows you to query Redis, SAP, Salesforce, ServiceNow, or Jira, all directly from inside of Grafana. You can now use Grafana API keys to publish your dashboards to give programmatic access to your Grafana workspace. They've enabled SSO via SAML2 integrations like CyberArk, Okta, OneLogin, etc. And all calls managed Grafana are now captured in CloudTrail, so you can do all your auditing, make all your security people happy, and then available now in 10 regions with still more coming later this year. So nice improvements to Grafana. If this is something you were waiting for going wide and generally available, it's now available for you to go try out and use it.
I want to stick that in front of Jira for sure. That sounds like fun. Grab some
querying Jira with
interesting metrics. Yeah.
It'll be a lot of fun. Especially considering how bad the Jira Jira plugin reporting is.
The reporting, yeah, it's so restrictive. It's like it's a broken reporting tool when you start futzing with where you stick data in what field, in the wrong fields, or the way you structure your tickets and everything, just so that reporting can possibly get you what you need.
Yeah. It's a bad day too when people start getting mad when you want to change data to fields and labels, because it's going to break, massive amounts of people in a schema. You're like, okay, well, I need the flexibility. Yeah, you can't have it. Everyone has to be the same. It's always a rough situation. Well, moving on to Google Cloud, they were light this week, but they had two announcements that they wanted to share with you. First of all, Google Cloud for Postgres now supports Linux huge pages by default. This was something you could do before, but you had to go figure out how to turn it on through the psql commands. And if your instance has more than 2 gigs of RAM, then it will automatically use Linux huge pages. For those of you who don't know who Linux huge pages are, is basically means you'll have 2 megabit pages in memory versus the default 4 kilobytes pages. And this, of course, has many benefits like improved memory usage, as well as improved performance, because DB is dealing with less data or more data at one time that they can put through the buffers, which is always helpful. Welcome to early 2000s, Google. I appreciate you getting this for us by default. There you go. That's all I can say.
It's actually quite an overhead. It's for a single tenant, turning that on is probably going to make very little difference. Almost unnoticeable performance difference. And saying that you're going to have more memory available to use because you're using larger pages and fewer of them, maybe a tiny amount. But mostly, I think the main benefit for this change is going to be shared tenancy systems, because with virtualization, every time there's a context switch between different tenants on a CPU, you have to throw away that entire cache and reload it. The smaller that cache is, the faster that's going to be, and so the better overall performance you'll get from the system. And so I think it's probably more about their overall performance than it is about an individual having slightly faster response times.
Yeah, I don't know. Some really big Postgres databases, you maybe get something, but most of your small instance sizes, you're not going to get much of a benefit. So, all right. The last one, of course, for anybody who's using serverless apps, the bane of your existence is the dreaded cold start. And so Google Functions this week is giving you some new improvements for cold starts. And Google says here in this article that over the last year, they have shipped many enhancements, including new runtimes, new regions, and enhanced user and developer experiences with fine-grained security and cost and scaling controls. But as you expand these capabilities, the startup tax, aka cold starts, can take a few seconds to start up and scale requests. So basically what Google's saying here, if I were to summarize this, is we put too many things in the boat and the boat is sinking. And so now we need to make it faster. And so that's what they've done for you. To address this, Google is giving you the ability to specify a minimum number of instances of your application to keep online during periods of low demand. And this new feature can help improve performance for your serverless applications workloads, minimizing your cold start. No mention, of course, of the cost of these minimum instances, but like in the world of AWS, they do charge you some minimum fee for each instance you want to keep warm, and then you pay that on a monthly basis in addition to the execution time. So we don't know what that's going to look like for Google yet. It's because it's pre-GA. It doesn't have a price to it, so you get to use this for free for a period of time until that gets generally available, and then you'll start paying for it. So we'll keep an eye on that, what it's going to cost. But if you've been dreading the cold start problems like Google Functions, they've got this for you this week.
I always love the flip-flop between serverless and serverful.
Yeah, let's talk about a database with huge pages, and then let's talk about no server with no memory. And it's a little bit of fun. I didn't even think about that dichotomy there.
In a way, it's kind of weird that they architect this in this way, and they add this functionality to what is actually supposed to be a serverless implementation. I would, if previously I would have designed this differently. I would have had a small container system running somewhere doing the job until we needed to burst into the serverless realm. So it's weird that that they're offering this the way they are, and it's sort of changing the very nature of the intent of the service rather than just telling people to architect their solution using the other existing tools.
I almost feel like we need to change the term serverless to something else, because this is still great because I don't have to patch those instances. I don't have to manage the operating system or anything like that. So still serverless, even though there's servers, but I don't know. Maybe it should be patchless or something.
Yeah, it's more like a billing model more than anything, isn't it? It's like a consumption-based billing rather than time-based, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's servers behind everything, so nothing serverless. Just how exposed are you to it? And to me, I think the level of exposure where it's no longer serverless is if I have to patch it.
For listeners of the Cloud Pod, you know that I have no love for Microsoft Active Directory, which is why I'm excited to tell you about the leading cloud directory platform, JumpCloud. JumpCloud makes it easy to solve today's IT challenges by unifying device and user management through a single pane of glass, enabling you to securely manage your users and devices and perform common tasks like onboarding and offboarding remote workers. With JumpCloud, you no longer need to implement an on-premise Active Directory infrastructure or additional tooling to scope a user's access, and you can ensure that the user is coming from trusted devices and networks. Enabling JumpCloud's zero-trust solutions improves the security and compliance of your network, ensuring users have access only to the services they need when they need them. To start your organization's move to a modern, secure hybrid work model, try JumpCloud for free today at cloud.jumpcloud.com/thecloudpod. That's cloud.jumpcloud.com/thecloudpod. All right, well, let's move on to Azure. They had no announcements this week, but that means there's a vacuum I had to fill for Azure, and they luckily gave it to me with a security vulnerability that was pretty serious. And so we're going to talk about the Chaos DB vulnerability discovered by Wiz. So basically, the first article that I summarized here was from I think Business Insider or one of those publications. But basically, Microsoft reportedly warned thousands of customers of their cloud computing Cosmos database, including large enterprises, that intruders could have had the ability to read, change, or even delete their main database. The vulnerability is in the Microsoft, of course, Cosmos DB, and a research team discovered that it was able to access keys that control access databases by thousands of their companies. Wiz CTO Amy Lutwack is the former CTO of Microsoft Cloud Security Group, so she clearly knew where to go to find all the problems.
Yeah.
And as Microsoft apparently couldn't change the keys themselves, they had to email you, the customer, to get that done. So if you were impacted, you did get a customer email with this. Microsoft reportedly paid $40,000 to Wiz, which thank God that Wiz was okay with that, because that seemed cheap to me for what this was. I would have paid more. I'm sure they could have found people in the black web who would have paid a lot more than $40,000 for this.
I mean, how does that even work? Is there just a fixed amount that they agree to pay for each flaw? And
well, so typically they're through a bug bounty program, and so when you do bug bounties, you have some type of standard guidance, but then the extraordinary security things you find, you typically have special pricing and things they can do, because what they're competing against is people who are selling exploits to the dark web, and third country states that want that type of vulnerability to go get data, but overall it just seems like a really low price for how bad this could have been.
Oh yeah. Totally. I was curious about that, because it's then all of a sudden, if you're negotiating that price, it sort of feels like it starts going from bounty to extortion.
Right, exactly. I think it's why they have guidelines, but there's still things that Microsoft can do to kind of go above and beyond, and maybe there are things that were negotiated. You just don't know. Microsoft indicates there was no evidence of external entities outside of the researcher from Wiz who had access to primary read-write keys, and Wiz has named this the Chaos DB vulnerability. And they allegedly reported to Microsoft on August 9th, they found it on August 9th and reported it to Microsoft on August 12th. And the flaw is in the Jupyter Notebook capability of Cosmos DB. So then Wiz wrote a pretty lengthy blog post, which highlights what they did and what they found. And so I read through this, and I summarize this as well. Basically, they created a loophole allowing any user to download, delete, or manipulate a mass collection of commercial databases. Via a new feature, which was enabled by default in February 2021 for allowing Jupyter Notebooks to visualize Cloud Cosmos DB data, but a series of misconfigurations in the Notebook feature opened up a new attack vector. In short, the Notebook container allowed for a privileged escalation into their customer notebook, And as a result, an attacker could gain access to a customer's Cosmos DB primary keys and other highly sensitive secrets, such as notebook blob storage access tokens. So not only did they get your Cosmos DB, they also got your blob storage behind your Cosmos DB too, which is great.
Oof.
Once you had the Cosmos DB secrets, Wiz showed how they leveraged those keys to get full admin access to all the data stored in Cosmos DB. By exfiltrating the keys, they also got long-term access to the customer asset and data, controlling Cosmos DB directly from the internet with full read, write, delete permissions. Wiz reported that Microsoft security team took immediate action to address the problem, and they had not seen security team move so fast before. They had disabled the notebook feature within 48 hours after the report, and it apparently is still turned off pending a full security redesign. Wiz reports that Microsoft notified over 30% of their Cosmos DB customers that they needed to manually rotate their access keys. However, Wiz believes many more Cosmos DB customers may have been at risk. Every Cosmos DB account that uses the notebook feature or that was created after January 2021 is potentially at risk. And starting in February, all new Cosmos DB customers had that feature enabled by default. If you didn't use the feature, though, within the first 3 days, it was disabled automatically for you, but that was a 3-day window that someone could access your data in Cosmos DB on Create. So there you go. That's pretty horrible. Not good.
Could have been so much worse.
Not good. Yeah, it could have been so much worse.
The story could have been, health data. It could have been financial data, critical, intellectual property, lists of customers. Considering the deals the cloud companies are doing with national security agencies. I think they got off very lightly with 40K.
Yeah, exactly. I just reading through this, and as you go through the Wiz article, and we're linking to both the Business Week article and as well as the Wiz blog post, but read through this. It's it definitely it's one of those exploits where just like, yeah, this could have been really bad. And the fact that it wasn't worse is just a testament to the fact that there was a good researcher who found this versus a bad one.
Yep.
All right. How do you guys feel about them just enabling this by default, though? Like that seems like that's the part that I'm kind of miffed about the whole thing. It's like, okay, it's one thing if you have a feature and then you enable the feature and that feature then has a vulnerability. You were sort of involved in the choice versus this where they're just turning it on by default. Like, what is your guys' thought on that?
Yeah, especially Jupyter, which is obviously for very specific use cases, a subset of use cases for Cosmos. I just don't know why they would enable that by default. Like, how much are you helping companies who want it enabled by enabling it by default?
I mean, even if so I am a data scientist and I am interested in using Cosmos as my backend and I want to use Jupyter notebooks. Like, how real is it going to be for me within 3 days that I can actually use the Jupyter notebook to do what I want to do with the Cosmos dataset that I just imported when I'm just learning a tool? It's a very niche window where that 3-day window and a new Cosmos DB instance, and I'm assuming that's all these things align. Like, it's just such a weird edge case feature. I'm not really sure who it was designed for. I would love to understand more of the product brief on that one.
Yeah.
I guess it's just made to make people's lives easier, and making engineers' lives easier is something that all the hyperscalers have spent a lot of effort doing over the past few years. But I think features get added to services all the time, and they're normally included in the scope of existing IAM controls, and that's actually been a complaint of AWS as well. They'll deploy a new feature and there's no new permission for it. All of a sudden, your users can do this thing without having to explicitly allow it. So I think I don't hold it against them for enabling it. It's probably a more seamless developer experience. It's obviously they wouldn't have done it if they thought there was a defect in their implementation. I think we'll probably have to spend a lot of time going back and figuring out exactly how the error happened and exactly why there was such lax security around stealing data from other containers on the same hosts.
Yeah, I think the default, right, is enable as much as you can by default until you find out why you shouldn't. So, example would be Amazon's regions. All regions were obviously available to every account by default. Yep. until that created a pain point for customers, and then they went a different direction with it.
Yeah, they didn't actually ever really fix that problem, because the complaint was that I want to be able to turn off regions because I don't need them. And so what they did was they basically gave you some weird API endpoint control, which sort of works. And then they basically said, well, we won't just enable new regions for you by default. But once you enabled it, you can't turn it off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was definitely a Band-Aid, not a re-architecture.
Yeah. So I hear you. Again, I'm still baffled by the 3-day thing, because I'm like, okay, so I know this thing is supposed to have this by default, but now, I spun up today because, or late on Friday, because that's where, Labor Day weekend, I'm going to spin up on Friday. And then by Tuesday, it's been 3 days and it's been disabled. And the feature that I thought should be there isn't there. And then now I had to go to Azure documentation and figure out how to re-enable the feature, which, if you've ever been in Azure documentation, I'm sure that's, it's awful. So they're just, again, you turned it on for a very arbitrary amount of time for a reason. And I wish I understood what that reason was.
No reason.
You'll probably find there's some online training. You could sign up to do, free Cosmos DB with Jupyter training online someplace. And it was designed that way to be seamless for whatever that use case was. I mean, that's my guess.
Yeah. Designed for an edge case, though. It's always bad. All right. Well, enough about Chaos DB. If you had a Cosmos DB notification, or even if you didn't have one, Wiz does recommend that you rotate your keys. They got paid for this vulnerability. Microsoft only paid them $40,000. So, maybe Microsoft doesn't think it's as important as we do, but I would recommend rotating them. If you haven't done it already, go find the documentation on how to rotate your keys and take care of that. Just in case. Just makes you sleep better at night at the end of the day. All right, Peter, take us to the lightning round.
All right. AWS Systems Manager now enables additional application management capabilities.
Do you do systems or do you do applications? Will you just make up your mind, Systems Manager? Just pick one.
It's getting so complex. I need Systems Manager.
Yeah. I know. I like that they started to drop the simple Systems Manager from the name of some of these products because it doesn't feel so simple anymore.
Does not. AWS Copilot, on the other hand, now supports pub sub architectures.
Every pilot supports pubs. It's just the nature of the beast. They're at the pub. They're getting a beer as long as it's after the flight.
Hopefully it's after the flight.
I prefer Frank Lloyd Wright architectures personally, but whatever. Pub sub will do.
Little A-frame. Amazon VPC announces new routing enhancements to make it easy to deploy virtual appliances between subnets in a VPC. This sounds familiar.
This is with appliances, though. So, you gotta have the announcement first one till you get the first one out there and say, oh, we do this bump on the wire thing. And then we do another announcement to say we support appliances. And then they can, say, well, we have 2 announcements this week versus just one. So, well done, marketing.
Isn't that appliance just a server you don't have access to?
Yeah, really. True.
I remember really dealing with a HipChat appliance back in the day. And that was a server that I desperately didn't want access to because every time I got into it, I realized what the Rube Goldberg machine that was.
Yeah, you can only hope that they didn't actually run their SASOs the same way.
That's maybe why it doesn't exist anymore.
You ever wonder why NetApp was network appliance and not storage appliance?
Nope, never asked that question.
There you go. Amazon Aurora supports Postgres 13.
Lucky number 13. I'm a superstitious type. I'm gonna wait for 14. I'm not gonna upgrade to 13. Just gonna skip that one. And not worth playing those games.
I missed Jonathan.
We both went for the superstitious angle. I said unlucky for some.
Oh, unlucky for some?
Yeah.
Introducing dynamic partitioning in Amazon Kinesis Data Firehose.
Isn't it dynamic? I guess.
I got nothing for that.
Yeah. I wish I killed that one.
If you sing it, you win.
I don't even. What would I sing? Is this a song I'm just stumbling into? I didn't.
Like, isn't it romantic?
Isn't it romantic? Yeah, okay. I can see it.
But since you didn't sing it, Frank Lloyd Wright wins it.
Nice.
Obscure reference for the win.
I gave you a chance, Justin.
It's all right. I wasn't going to win on that.
It's not worth it. It's not worth it.
Once you heard my singing voice, you would have still taken the point away. So it's fine. This is a voice made for podcasting, not for singing. Trust me. All right. Well, after record time, we basically have the storage day coming up. So we have lots of announcements to talk about next week from AWS Storage Day. But there are things coming up still in the world of cloud. Azure has announced a data governance event on September 28th. If you're into all things data governance, you can enjoy that. I will not be here. So, by the way, Jonathan, you're going to have to host that week. I won't be here. SnickConf is coming up October 5th through 7th. KubeCon, October 11th to the 15th. And then Google Cloud Next, of course, October 12th to 14th. HashiConf is coming up after that, October 19th to 22nd. And then announcing the Government and Education Summit November 3rd through the 4th for Google Cloud. So if you're in the government or education space, Google has a special event for you November 3rd through 4th. And then, of course, reInvent, if it happens in person in Vegas, November 29th through December 3rd, or virtual. We're not sure yet. We'll see how that works out. But COVID numbers are not looking great, so I'm going to say probably a pass. We'll find out.
And then we got Moo. We got Moo coming.
Moo? What's Moo?
That's the new variant.
Oh, I haven't kept track. I just knew Delta was the thing.
A new variant that may be able to completely evade the vaccines.
It'd be more interesting if it could, eat cows. Like that's what's called the Moo variant. It just attacks cows. All right. Well, that is it for another fantastic week in the cloud. We will see you next week.
See you later.
Later.
And that is the week in the cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Foghorn Consulting and Jump Cloud. Check out our website, the home of the Cloud Pod, where you can join our newsletter, Slack team, and send feedback or ask questions at thecloudpod.net or tweet us with the hashtag #thecloudpod.